Hi Archers! Today, we'll be exploring Archero hero Bonnie and conclude if she's worth the $10 price tag. In this guide, for Bonnie, we'll be going through the best abilities and items, Bonnie's pros and cons, and the best and strongest weapon, all specifically for Bonnie. My name is Teeds and I make many Archero videos from guides, tier lists, gameplays, updates, and much more. Please do subscribe and click the bell for more Archero content. Let me preface this by saying that this is all based on my experience, research, and opinion. In the end, you may or may not agree with me. It's up to you to decide which hero is the best for your personal playstyle and taste. All heroes are great in their own way, with abilities that are useful for different situations. With that, let's begin with Bonnie. First, everything you need to know about Bonnie. Bonnie cost me $15 Australian, which is roughly $10 USD. This makes her the same price as O'Neill. Bonnie's ability is a stronger version of Shadow Clone, which isn't a high tier ability in my opinion, but certainly a fun ability. Her ability is called Dark Shadow, and it has a chance of spawning weaker versions of herself when monsters are killed. As far as I can tell with my research, the chance of spawning clones seems to be high, more than 50% at least, and there is no limit to how many clones you can spawn. This means Bonnie's special ability relies on having multiple enemies in the room. Each clone lasts for 9.3 seconds. Her clones deal 100% of your base damage, and I don't think this includes the weapon modifier. Her clones attack roughly once every 1.08 seconds. Clones' attacks cannot go through any type of wall. Each time you level Bonnie, you will gain plus 11 attack and plus 45 health. Bonnie has 2 hero universal stats you can unlock and 2 personal stats. At level 20, she gains 20% crit damage to all heroes, and at level 60, 5% max HP to all heroes. At level 40, she gains plus 5% attack speed, and at level 80, plus 5% attack. Her attributes are actually pretty good if you're someone who has the money to spend. The 20% crit damage is a very nice bonus, especially for Helix who already has personal crit attributes. Next, the best abilities and items for Bonnie. Bonnie's clones do not scale with any of the abilities, so attack boost and speed boost will not increase her clone's attack or attack speed. Her clone's abilities also do not apply any effects, so if you were to pick up Poison Arrow or Blaze, her clones will not gain the effect. This also goes for multi-shot, front arrow, etc. Her clone just stays the same, so same attack, same speed right from the beginning. Another ability that has been mentioned in my comments before is how it would stack with Summon One-Eyed Bat. So this ability is the same as Shadow Clone and Dark Shadow, but instead you will summon a bat when monsters die. Now the thing is, while it would be very fun to have 2 different types of clones, I honestly do not recommend picking up this ability. This is a bit complicated to explain, especially because I do not have definite information or exact insight on how these 2 abilities work together, but I feel that they clash more for the worse. Basically, how I see it, say there are 10 enemies in the room and 5 of those turn into clones. Now you have 2 of them that are Bonnie's clones and 3 of them that are Bat clones. Bonnie's clones are much more stronger than the Bat clones. So instead of the monsters turning into a strong clone of Bonnie, they've just turned into weak bats. I do not think it's predetermined or anything like that, but it could have been Bonnie's clones instead of bats. I did use both abilities and I didn't really find an increase in clones, but just more of a mixture of clones. Do keep in mind that this is my personal experience. I really do not have any way of telling unless Archero devs themselves shared how it works, but this is just something to keep in mind. Now that we got those out of the way, what are the best abilities for Bonnie? Well, you're not building for her clones because they do not gain any benefit in any way, so all you're really doing is building for Bonnie. What I would look for are abilities that will help you spawn more clones, which equal into killing enemies as fast as you can. So Ricochet, Multi-Shot, Front Arrow, Attack Boost, Crit, Rage, and just all the high tier abilities. I will be making a new tier list for abilities very soon if you're not sure what they are. A set of abilities that I would like to specifically mention are the Sword Strikes. Now the Sword Strikes have gained decent popularity and they are pretty good abilities. Because most of the bosses in Archero are single targets, Bonnie will struggle against bosses. Sword Strikes are abilities you should consider if you are planning to mainly play Bonnie. For items, just the general dodge build combo, so Vest of Dexterity and 2 Serpent Rings for a higher dodge chance. For pets, it's your preference. Next, the pros of Bonnie. She's a great hero for farming. If you're farming chapters that are usually easy to complete for you, I highly recommend switching to Bonnie. For comparison's sake, I tested a level 46 Helix against a level 20 Bonnie to see who would reach the first boss quicker in chapter 6. Helix took 1 minute and 26 seconds, while Bonnie took 1 minute and 18 seconds. It's good to note here that I didn't make use of Helix's special ability, but it would have taken me more time to just get down to lower health than it would have just to run Bonnie. She works very well in wave-focused chapters because they tend to have a lot of monsters in one go. Her clones deal the same initial base damage, which is pretty strong. Her clone's spawn rate is pretty high. The universal attributes such as 20% crit damage increase is very nice, especially if you're maining Helix. The clones will always use an arrow which has a slight knockback. This gives you some nice crowd control. And she's just a very fun hero overall. In my opinion, she's not a viable hero for progressing or pushing through chapters that are harder. I also only find her strongest in wave chapters because the more enemies, the more spawns. She's very weak against single targeted bosses. There are a few select bosses she's good against, such as the splitting skulls or the splitting spiders, but they're like some of the easiest bosses in the game. Because she is weak against bosses, this makes it very hard to progress through chapters. Her clones do not gain any boosts or skills that you may obtain through your runs. I do understand why though, it would make her pretty overpowered if it were to do so. I do think that balancing her in that regard would be pretty difficult. Her clone's attacks do not go through walls, which makes obstacles one of the biggest weaknesses, and this is a big one because Archero does get obstacle heavy as you progress. This makes some of her clones useless if they are behind an obstacle and cannot reach a monster. She's very circumstantial and is dependent on a number of things, which I will talk about next. I mentioned in the pros that her clones will have a slight knockback with their attacks due to using the arrow. This should be rare, but it can happen. The arrows could possibly push monsters out of position or melee monsters closer to you. Despite all the cons I've listed, I do find her one of the most fun heroes I've played in Archero. It is very satisfying when you have an army of clones, especially in wave chapters. Even with all the cons, it's not impossible to main her, but it would be very challenging than just using Helix. Next, the best weapon for Bonnie. I have done some testing with different level 1 common weapons and level 1 rare weapons, and it seems that Bonnie's clone's damage does not scale with the weapon's damage modifier. For example, the Death Scythe has 45% increased damage and the bow deals just 100% of the base damage. Her clone's base damage did not increase no matter which weapon I equipped. This might be because the clones are supposedly just using the bows. For this reason, I will say your weapon preference with Bonnie is up to you. I usually do a bunch of numbers of each weapon, however, Bonnie is just super circumstantial. Probably the most circumstantial hero of all in Archero. The most ideal situation for Bonnie to maximize her ability and damage is many monsters to spawn clones, clones successfully spawning, and no obstacles. I cannot calculate how much damage she would do in total with her special ability, as it's always going to be different. If you're playing Bonnie, you'll have very little control over her special ability. So while the damage of the clones doesn't seem to scale with the modifier of the weapon, there are some things you should consider. The Tornado is one of the most popular weapons in the game due to its high damage per second, but it does lack in the knockback department. This means the Tornado doesn't really have any crowd control, so it's weakest against melee monsters. Tornado users more so have to rely on killing the enemy as fast as possible. Now this makes it pretty nice, but in my opinion, I find that the Tornado is a very strong farming weapon, except if you're farming up close dangers. As I do honestly think that Bonnie is a strong farming hero, Bonnie paired up with a Tornado would make a very strong, fast farming combo. Other than that, if you wanted to use Bonnie for progressing through chapters, the crowd control of her bow would be useful in that regard and can make up for the lack of knockback on the Tornado. If you do decide to main her instead of any other hero, keep in mind that it may be a very difficult and challenging journey unless you're very skilled. I think I'm a very average archer, so I would not be able to main Bonnie at all. I guess if any of you are finding the game too easy at the moment, Bonnie may be a nice change of pace. Plus, it's very satisfying watching an army of clones demolish everything on the map. But all in all, you can honestly just use any weapon you like with Bonnie. While she's not the strongest hero, she's definitely, in my opinion, a very fun hero. Should you spend money on Bonnie? Well, if you have the money and it's not a big deal for you, sure. You could just use her for fun or use her as a farming hero or main her if you really like her. Otherwise, I wouldn't go out of my way to try and get her. I don't think she's a necessary hero. And that is all I have for the Bonnie guide. I thank you very much for watching. If you would like to see any of my other hero guides, you can find them in the boxes here or in the description box below. For the next guide, it will be about Onia. A like and comment would be super rad. Subscribe and click the bell for more Archero videos. I hope to see you again for the next one. Bye!